Hello everyone. Today, we're taking you through an urgent cold case, and we need your help with it right now. We're going to ask you to watch to the end and sign the petition to reopen the police investigation into the bizarre death of Elizabeth Santos immediately. If local news plus lawyers in Alaska can start paying attention, this family can finally get the answers and the closure that they need. So please, share this video and spread the word about this case as fast as you can. We don't have much time. On August 8th, 2020 in Anchorage, Alaska, two Anchorage police officers responded to a 911 call made by Lazette Hoglund-Hall. When they arrived at her home, they found Lazette Hoglund-Hall, her son Desmond, and Lizette's friend Elizabeth Omotara Santos. Elizabeth was bleeding to death from multiple stab wounds. Hi, welcome back to Mysterious 7. My name is Matt, and today I'm going to take you back 2 years in the past to tell you Elizabeth's story. Now I'm going to be honest with you guys. This one is pretty upsetting for me. On this channel, I try to be as honest with you guys as I can, but I have to be clear. There are some very graphic details and untold secrets that are still unfolding in this case, much of which are difficult to stomach. And it is starting to feel pretty personal to me. You see, this is the first time on Mysterious 7 that we have personally responded to a cry for help. We are not professional investigators, but when Elizabeth's brother, Elizabeth Santos, reached out to us, we knew we had to tell his story. Elizabeth Omotara Santos was a 37-year-old African-American woman of Nigerian-Brazilian ancestry. She was a Florida native and had been living in Alaska on and off since 2010. In the days leading up to her death, Elizabeth had just broken up with her boyfriend of 10 years, Dustin Curpius. At that point, Elizabeth left Dustin's home and went to stay with her friend and co-worker, Lazette Hoglund-Hall. All friends who were interviewed by the APD following her death stated that Elizabeth was happy with the breakup, but still worried about her ex-boyfriend. Elizabeth's friends all described her as one of the sweetest, kindest, and calmest people they ever knew. Unfortunately, an argument and confrontation with Lazette wound up cutting her life short. Now, we still don't know exactly what started that fight, but the following sequence of events comes straight from police records. At 6 a.m., the fight between Lazette Hoglund-Hall and Elizabeth Santos began. Lazette claimed that she and her adult son, Desmond Marcus Hall, managed to run upstairs to the second floor of their home to hide in a bathroom. From there, Lazette called 911, claiming that she was in fear for her life. At 6:16 a.m., patrol officers Tae Yoon and Valeria Estrella from the APD arrived on the scene. Once on the scene, they observed that Elizabeth was showing symptoms of mental confusion, including erratic movements and slurred speech as she was unable to speak clearly. The officers quickly assumed that behavior probably stemmed from some kind of substance that she had consumed. They noted that Elizabeth was dressed only in an open robe. The officers claimed that Elizabeth's wounds didn't seem serious, but case photos and documentation showed that the robe she was wearing was heavily saturated in blood. The officers made note of the bruising and scratches on Lizette's face that stemmed from her recent fight with Elizabeth. The second was that the surroundings were messy with knocked-over plants. At 6:42 a.m., Elizabeth was placed into handcuffs.
Relax. Come on, we're trying to help you. Yeah, come over here.
At 6:46 a.m., paramedics arrived and Elizabeth was placed in an ambulance. At 7:23 a.m., the paramedics officially began the transport to the hospital, 37 minutes after Elizabeth was placed inside. At 7:36 a.m., the ambulance reached the hospital and Elizabeth was rushed into emergency surgery. Reports mention that the surgeons were confused about the information they were given, especially considering the extent of the injuries and the extreme blood loss. At 7:56 a.m., The same 2 patrol officers, Yoon and Estrella, were dispatched and told to return to the scene to take Lazette and Desmond into custody. At 8:20 a.m., the same 2 officers finally returned to the scene of the crime. Minutes prior, Lazette had managed to somehow unlock Elizabeth's iPhone and call Elizabeth's sister Nikki in Miami. Nikki thought that it was Elizabeth calling, so imagine her utter shock and confusion when she heard a loud and belligerent woman yelling, "Your sister Elizabeth owes me money. She has some holes in her. Your sister owes me money. The paramedics left with her a while ago. She has holes in her. Elizabeth owes me some money. Wait, now the cops are back." That was how Elizabeth's family, all the way across the country in Miami, first found out about her life-threatening injuries. Lazette and Desmond were then driven to the police station in separate cars and interviewed in separate rooms. Now, to me, this part sounds like shutting the barn door long after the horses have run off and gone, doesn't it? Because this mother and son duo had more than enough time between the departure and return of the officers to potentially plot what to say and what not to say, and to tamper with the crime scene. So why was it assumed that they had done nothing and were in no way responsible for what happened to Elizabeth in their house? But let's get back to the timeline here. At 10:30 a.m., Lazette was interviewed by Officer Jason DeVille. During her statement, Lazette told the interviewing officer the story about the fight, running to hide and calling 911 with her son, and then seeing Elizabeth's injuries for the first time when the patrol officers arrived on the scene. Lazette later described the fight with Elizabeth in more detail to Officer DeVille.
And I just started like saying, "Desmond, call 911, call 911," and I ran upstairs.
Where was Desmond at? Is he upstairs or downstairs?
He was downstairs, but I don't know if he was in the bathroom or in his bedroom.
So downstairs?
Yes,
Okay.
he was downstairs. And so I ran upstairs.
So wait a minute, so I just want to go back. I'm kind of like a detail-oriented guy. So as you're on your back and she's trying to claw you, bite you, how are you defending yourself?
I'm just kind of like blocking.
So you have your hands in front of your face
Yeah,
right now.
I'm like
hands
blocking.
up, just blocking.
Like, yeah.
Okay.
Just blocking.
And then does she eventually stop?
No, I mean, I guess not. Only because I like got away from her
How
and
did you
ran
get away from
upstairs. Like I just kind of like scooted my way and ran upstairs and I told my son, call 911, and then he brought his phone. I didn't even call from my own phone. My son, I thought maybe my son called, but instead he brought his phone upstairs, and he and I hid. And
Where'd you hide at?
in my bedroom, we locked the door, and so my bathroom has 2 doors.
Mm-hmm.
It goes like this, 2 doors, and she's like banging on the doors.
So you're in the bathroom?
No, it's connected. The bathroom is connected
to
my bedroom
So you're hiding in your bedroom?
with the doors locked.
Okay.
Me and my son are both in the bedroom with the doors locked.
Okay.
And we hear her in the kitchen. We hear her out there saying stuff, moaning.
What does she say?
Moaning. It sounds like it's not really like you can hear it. It's more like a so it's like that's my best impression.
Okay. Is she banging on the doors, trying to open the door?
It felt like she was about to bust open the doors, right?
Okay, so it was like loud bangs trying to get in?
Yeah, like boom, boom.
In this interview, Lazette claimed that Elizabeth had been banging and screaming at her locked bedroom door during that 6 a.m. 911 phone call. However, none of these alleged noises could be heard in the background during that call. Also, something that should be mentioned is that Lazette lives in a duplex, and her next-door neighbor that she shares a wall with did not recall hearing any noise around that time either. She did, however, mention hearing banging noises around 3 a.m. Lazette further described how Elizabeth had no injuries prior to the arrival of the patrol officers. So the injuries just magically appeared just as the police officers showed up. But also, Lazette saw Elizabeth inflicting the injuries on herself earlier, and Elizabeth was able to bang on the room door and stab herself repeatedly at the same time. Sure, that checks out. Lazette then describes to Officer DeVille the main knife that Elizabeth allegedly used to stab herself with many times over and its possible location.
Did you see anything? You said when you came out you saw blood and stuff. Did you see anything in your house that might have caused that? Any type of object?
I saw a knife.
Okay, so you did see a knife?
But I didn't do anything because I was too busy on the phone.
Okay, where was the knife?
Upstairs in the living room.
Where at?
Next to the couch.
What type of knife is this?
It's just like it's either a steak knife or it was like the next size up. Like, like it's one or the other.
At 10:33 a.m., Desmond Hall was interviewed by Detective Jeff Bell over in the very next interrogation room. Rather than explaining what happened, Desmond asked for an attorney.
So she's got some injuries. She's at the hospital, and so things kind of changed from when the police first got there to now, and she has some pretty serious injuries. So, yeah, so that's why we got called. That's why it's making a little bit bigger deal than what it originally saw. And there may very well be an explanation for it.
At 12:48 p.m., Officer DeVille returned to Lizette's interrogation room and informed her of Elizabeth's death at the hospital. Now, bear in mind that previously, Lazette stated that Elizabeth was uninjured prior to the arrival of the patrol officers. But Lizette's story immediately changed once she learned about the death.
Desmond and I were hiding in the room. I said I saw blood, but we were hiding. I couldn't have my son and I out there.
So is this after the police came or right before?
I called you guys after this happened, and then I heard her in the kitchen, and then I heard moaning and I heard the talking and stuff, but I was like, baby, we're staying in here till the cops come. I heard her banging, like I told you, it was like she was like on my doors, but I was like, no, like I was like, even like up until they rang the door, I was like, I had the door locked, but I didn't want her to like push in through the door. They're not that sturdy of doors, so I just.
Later that afternoon, both Lazette and Desmond were freed from police custody. And despite Lizette's criminal history, neither her nor her son, Desmond Hall, were ever charged. After Elizabeth's death, a lot of misinformation was set in motion by her ex-boyfriend, Dustin. He told the APD that one time in the past, Elizabeth had supposedly handled a knife while having an altercation with him. However, Dustin's own sister commented that his memory can't necessarily be trusted, since he was often very forgetful as a result of his epilepsy, which causes occasional seizures. Incidentally, Elizabeth's toxicology report shows the presence of midazolam, a medication that Elizabeth was never prescribed and is used to treat seizures. Multiple friends of Elizabeth that were interviewed by the APD all disputed Lizette's description of her behavior. They all describe her as a non-violent, non-drug user and in a good mood when they last spoke. One friend in particular last saw Elizabeth 6 days earlier, but mentioned that Elizabeth called her the day before her death.
She told me was that she was scared of her boyfriend, but she was scared that he was going to shoot her or something.
The day of Elizabeth's death, Lazette began to tell people that she had watched Elizabeth stab herself repeatedly and slit her own throat. Detective Bell called another friend that Elizabeth attempted to contact a couple of hours before the stabbing, and Bell asked for his perspective. Additional audio evidence from that day has recently surfaced that was originally suppressed by the APD, which includes first-hand accounts of what Lizette's neighbors saw and heard that morning.
She only said 2 sentences, but she came out screaming, I think. I know there was screaming, and just the loudest voice you can ever hear someone put out, just real loud.
Perhaps the most compelling eyewitness statement came from a neighbor who, according to Google Earth, lives only 177 feet away from Lizette's home. So as the family continued to fight to get the case reopened, they found it even more disturbing in January of 2021 when they found out that many of Elizabeth's friends and associates in Anchorage had thrown a birthday party for her around that same time. But who throws a birthday party for someone who recently died brutally under extremely abnormal circumstances and then invites the main suspect? As you can see from these images, they clearly had a great time. One friend in attendance did tell the family that he showed up in support of Elizabeth's memory, but was quickly creeped out by the aura upon arrival and Lizette's presence. Is it even possible that the extremely weird and horrifyingly inappropriate birthday party was intended as some sort of celebration of Elizabeth's death instead of her life? I mean, hey, it has been known to happen. The Santos family has also attempted to gain police dashcam footage of the APD patrol officer's initial arrival to Lizette's home, but the APD claims that this footage does not exist. Based on jurisdictional restrictions, only an attorney licensed in Alaska can help the Santos family fight for justice. To date, the family has reached out to various law firms in Alaska, the State Bar Association, the Alaska Bureau of Investigations, the ACLU, and countless reporters, including the only reporter who wrote about the incident, Marlise Irby of KTUU. Their pleas for assistance have been ignored constantly, and reporter Marlise Irby eventually left the station without ever replying to requests to update her article. Other reporters in Anchorage have interviewed the family and promised to release the story, but never have. After further review of the crime scene photos, it was determined that there was actually a fourth knife found on the scene that was never mentioned in the police report. This knife was found in the garage nearby where Lazette said the fight between her and Elizabeth occurred. To further add to this, a recent conversation between Desmond Hall and a private investigator also confirms that Elizabeth did not stab herself.
It's almost like, I don't know, there's a ghost in our home now. I didn't see her grab the knife. I didn't see her cutting herself.
The head of APD's homicide unit, Sergeant Bianca Cross, and her superior officers still insist that the blood-soaked open robe that Elizabeth was wearing was actually soaked in sweat. Based on police reports, Lazette claims that the only substance she gave Elizabeth in the hours leading up to her death were 4 Benadryls. Also, keep in mind one key fact, that Elizabeth's ex-boyfriend Dustin and Lizette's son Desmond are also friends with one another. Sergeant Cross continues to claim that there were no signs of a struggle and that the APD has no suspects. To date, Cross refuses to process any of the collected forensic information collected the day of the murder. The case was never ruled a homicide, and contrary to popular belief, it was never ruled a suicide by the medical examiner, and Elizabeth had no injuries to the neck whatsoever. Overall, it is really concerning as to why the APD and the media are going to such great lengths to suppress this story. Thus, it begs the question, who is connected to whom, and why is it so important that this case remains suppressed? In the state of Alaska, the statute of limitations to file a civil suit in a case like this is 2 years. August 8th, 2022 marks this 2-year deadline. So it is most likely that the APD knows that they botched the entire investigation so badly that they are purposely waiting for this date to pass before they admit fault and reopen the case. So that's how it turned out that Elizabeth Omotara Santos, a young woman with no previous known history of violence, drug abuse, or mental instability, ended up dying from accidentally stabbing herself 10 times. According to our own verification and research, the drug midazolam typically produces sleepiness and is also used in surgical procedures for anesthesia. However, it was confirmed that it was never given to her during her emergency surgery. Based on the narrative that Desmond provided to the private investigator, the presence of midazolam and what Elizabeth was wearing, was it possible that sexual assault was also involved? Because honestly, I'd love to know how a drugged and incoherent person could possibly be insane enough to quickly stab themselves at least 10 times, yet coordinated enough to do it with 3 different knives and neatly clean each one and plant them in 3 different locations, all while pounding at a locked bedroom door. All I can say is that this whole case, with all its many inconsistencies, has left a severely bad taste in my mouth. Lastly, following Elizabeth's death, rumors resurfaced that Lazette was also allegedly involved in the fatal stabbing of her ex-boyfriend in Alaska a few years earlier. Now, while we cannot confirm this, there is a plethora of evidence supporting the incident with Elizabeth Santos, and there haven't been any reports on it either. In less than 2 months, the window for a civil lawsuit of legal liability against the APD will close for this case. We have until August 2022 to get the word out. We'll continue with this investigation for as long as we can, and we hope to bring you some real answers in a follow-up episode. In the meantime, we need your support. Sign the petition, share this video, and let's get the word out about the unsolved murder of Elizabeth Santos. The links are in the description of this video. If local news plus lawyers in Alaska start paying attention, this family can finally get the answers and the closure that they need. If her killers are walking free today, we want to see them caught and brought to justice.
Hello everybody, my name is Elizabeth Santos. I'm the brother of Elizabeth Santos. I want to thank everybody for sharing this information about this case and contacting the family to let them know that this case never made sense to anybody since day one. I also hope that it shows that the APD and the local media have done like a very good job at pretending like this case never happened. With your help, this information about this case can be exposed to more people, and I hope that no other family has to go through what we have gone through. And please help us continue to fight for justice.